Good morning, and thanks for joining us on Doug for Prez. So I'm Doug, and I am running for president in 2020. Chances? Well, I'm guessing they're pretty slim, but with your help, it can go a lot better. I have been watching what's been going on in the news and the media and the things that the Trump administration is doing, and we have some positives. They are trying to push through the no tax on tips. Well, that's an improvement. And no tax on Social Security. That's a huge improvement as well. But it's not going far enough. No tax on income. Why should we be punishing Americans for earning? It doesn't make sense. And the cost of collecting and ensuring that we have everything done, and the costs to the taxpayer for collecting those taxes, and the penalties for not paying on time, and it's ridiculous. If any business operated the way the government operates, they would be having the leadership jailed and shutting down the business. So how do we change it? Well, it's simple. We stop punishing people for earning and start rewarding them for basically saving. We reward them by them not having to pay as much in taxes by saving. But since we know we all need to spend, we're not going to get away from that. And so this so-called tax refund that we seem to all look forward to will just go away, but we'll have more in our pocket. And that means that the IRS won't need as many people. But the government has need for people in other parts of government right now. And hopefully, as government does what it's been doing and managing the border and managing the illegals process, we'll be able to reduce that workforce as well. And taking people out of non-productive jobs and having them move into jobs that are productive and make money for organizations and corporations and themselves. Don't forget that. Making money for yourself. And when you take that money out of the hands of bureaucrats, where they just take your money and put it in your own hands, where you have control over how you spend your money, and then allow taxation to be what it is on what you purchase, because, hey, I want a new truck. Yeah, it'll cost a little bit more. But that's okay because the taxes that we pay on buying a new vehicle are not coming out of our paycheck. Well, they are, but we're choosing how much we are willing to pay in taxes. So you may still choose to buy that F550 or Ram 2500 or 5500 or that Chevy Silverado 5500, which, any of those three vehicles will run you easily $100,000 just for the purchase price now. And with you being able to keep your entire paycheck and then the sales taxes on it, it might make that truck $115,000, $120,000. But at least you know that you're paying those taxes on that vehicle. And we should be including the tax in the price of the vehicle. So when you go to the dealer and you say, I'll give you $100,000 for that vehicle, and they look at you and laugh and say, well, we got to get 115, then you haggle a little bit and maybe you can get it down to 112. The dealer's making its money, the government's making its money, and we're not having to pay taxes. Well, we are, but it's not paying it for tax day and an accountant and or paying for software and whatnot. Now it's a whole different situation. And some may say, oh, but we're going to put accountants out of work. Nah, there'll be plenty of work for accountants. Their job will just become something that's not limited to a few months out of the year. They'll be having to calculate those taxes on a daily basis, and those taxes will need to be sent up to the feds. So the feds will be getting tax payments every day of the week, 365 days of the year. It doesn't matter if it's Christmas Day. They'll be getting their money. It won't matter if it's New Year's Day. They'll be getting their money. It doesn't matter if it's Halloween. They'll be getting their money. Don't care if it's Easter. They'll be getting their money. I don't care if it's Rosh Hashanah or however you pronounce that Jewish holiday. I don't care if it's a Muslim holiday. Government's getting their money. And now you're in control of how much you pay in taxes. You decide how much you're paying in taxes. Now, business, they'll be paying taxes on the things they're purchasing as well. But again, businesses, they have an advantage over you and I who are consuming, because they just pass along those costs directly. People sit there and say, oh, the rich don't pay their fair share. Well, that's not necessarily true. And it's very true. Most of the people who are very, very wealthy, they're literally selling things. And those taxes that are paid, well, money has to be collected to pay those taxes. And so it goes into the price you pay for the good you buy. So what changes? Not a whole lot, except that now you have a choice. You get to choose how much you pay in taxes by the things you purchase. Such a novel idea, right? Well, it's not going to prevent the people who want to continue to buy the Bugattis and the hypercars and the super expensive toys. They just know they're going to be having to pay the taxes on them. And they will, because that's what they do. There's a certain level of status that goes with having some of those toys. But some may decide, hey, I can forego that. But a lot of those hypercars and whatever, they go to people who are using them in their businesses. And so it personally doesn't really cost them because they're making money off of it. And there's nothing wrong with that. In fact, we should be lauding people who are starting businesses and looking for opportunities. In today's business environment, there are so many things that you have to be considerate of as being an entrepreneur and building a business. You've got all the tax implications, you have all the legal implications, and collecting taxes and payroll taxes and Social Security taxes, and the list of taxes goes on and on and on. Let's make it simple. As a business who sells a product, let's say it's an electric bike. They sell the electric bike. The electric bike costs, on average, let's say $2,000 for the electric bike. And let's say the taxes on that are $300 per bike. And that's probably a low estimate. So you end up paying $2,300 for the bike. When you go into the showroom, it says that bike is $2,300. You pay the $2,300. You're done. You have your toy and you've paid your taxes, and you don't have to be concerned about how am I going to ensure that I have all the taxes paid the government wants. That's a small option that provides great reward for each and every one of us. I can't emphasize how much that would spare your life in the hassles and the requirements of meeting the requirements government has placed on each and every individual in this country to pay them for what we earn. No more of this capital gains taxes. No more of this death tax. No more of these stupid, weird taxes so that the government can waste our money. Now government needs to sit there and go, well, how much do we need to make sure the tax rate needs to be so that we have all the wasteful money that we need through spending? And we can't have the taxes too high because we won't have any money because people won't spend, and we'll always be spending, but it won't increase the amount of revenue that the government is getting. But we need to ensure that the tax rate is high enough. It's finding that sweet spot. But in the end, we don't have to pay thousands and thousands and thousands of IRS workers to process tax returns and ensure that money gets sent so that the Treasury can send us a check, or we have to sit there and write the government a check because we didn't calculate that we had enough money pulled out of our paychecks to pay income tax. That would be done away with everything paid on consumption. It's such a novel idea. And on top of that, it would allow us as a government to get our finances under control because we'll need better controls, because we need to know how much we're spending. There are a lot of people out there, and I know some who do whatever they can to avoid paying income taxes. So they literally are homeless, not because they have to be, but because they choose to be. Because when they work, they're working on their terms and they're collecting their revenue from people who allow them to do small jobs here and there, and they do jobs that pay a few $100s here, a few $100s there, but they don't collect it from one individual. They collect it from, maybe a few hundred people throughout the year. There are also other businesses who literally are tax cheats in that they don't record every piece of income that they make. If you pay that company in cash, then they take that cash and they stick it in their pocket. They don't take it to the bank. They don't allow the banks to let the government know that they had business performed. And when they go put gas in their vehicle, they use cash. They use cash for everything as much as possible. And businesses hire these people to do work because they can pay them cash too. And they take that cash from their receipts and they just, when they do their accounting for the end of the day, they just subtract that amount out of their totals, and none the wiser, no one. It's easy, it's simple, it saves the business money, it saves everyone a lot of money. It's tax evasion at its finest. And capture it. It means that you have to have people who are willing to report it. And I don't know very many people who are sitting there going, oh, if you go cut down my tree, if I pay you with a check, then it's going to cost me 6,000. But if I just hand you money under the table, it's going to cost two. Which one makes the most sense? It's under the table. It literally costs those businesses a lot more money to collect the taxes, pay the taxes, deal with the tax liabilities. They even so much as go out and buy newer vehicles. They don't buy them brand new. They buy used vehicles that are 3 to 6 months old. They're essentially brand new. They'll have a few thousand miles on them. They don't buy them from a dealer. They buy them from people, and they pay them cash because they have it stuffed in a mattress. And they even so much as say, well, I may pay you 70,000 for that truck, but on paper, we'll just say that I paid 30 for it. And those kinds of things, I'm sorry to say, aren't going to go away, but at least the original tax on that truck is paid, and the person who sells it, you know, can't say what they're doing, but I would venture to say that if I sold my truck for 50 grand, I probably wouldn't put that money in the bank. It just doesn't make sense. It doesn't. There's nothing in that says, oh, that just perfectly makes sense to me. It doesn't. So, I would hang on to the cash and put it in a nice safe place and spend it as my monthly spending money. Because I don't want the banks having to tattle on me. Because, oh, that's right. It's a federal requirement that the banks tattle on every $600+ I put in the bank. And that's over, I think it's over a month. So, I could put $500 into my savings account every month out of that money. And then I'll have 3,000 in my savings at least. And then I can gas and pay my insurance or whatnot, pay it all in cash. That's what you got to do sometimes. Not fun, not easy, not wonderful, but people do what they got to do, and nobody likes paying taxes, but you make that tax payments easier with less problems, they're going to collect more of it. It's just going to happen. But we've created a system where we've allowed tax collection to happen out of income. It's honestly a very poor way to collect income. But on the other hand, it generates a lot of money, especially since we're looking at the fact that with income tax and sales tax and this tax and that tax and whatever else, the average American is paying somewhere between 30 and 40% of what they earn in taxes. That's a lot of money. Does that mean that they can't collect that same level of revenue through sales tax? Absolutely, the government could. It's not that hard. But now you're putting that tax collection into the hands of businesses who are collecting sales taxes. Those sales taxes get processed on a daily basis. And what happens from there? Ah, well, you don't need as many IRS agents. You don't need as many auditors. And when they do audits, they just go to the books, they look, and they see that most of those dollars, well, they're being spent. Most car dealers, they don't own any of their inventory. Their inventory is owned by the bank, technically. And when they sell the car, then they pay off the bank what's owed to them. They keep their piece, and in states where they have to collect the sales tax, that piece gets sent off. And there's accounting that needs to be done in there, and they just take care of all of that. And at the end, the dealer ends up, collecting in, after all expenses are paid, probably $1,000 to $2,000 per vehicle. Pretty dang good. And then that money then is eventually distributed to the ownership body at some point. And then those people have to pay taxes on that. But what if we said, hey, you don't have to pay the income tax? That would make it a lot easier for some people to spend more money. But they also are in the habit of saving. And for those who are not in the habit of saving, if they know that, hey, I got to pay this huge amount to government and taxes for buying this product, they might hold off for a little while. Is it going to really hurt the business? It might a little bit, but in the end, no. People eventually, come out and they purchase what they're going to purchase. They know what they want. The Xbox 5, or PlayStation 5, the Xbox, the Ford truck, Dodge truck, Chevy truck, the SUV, the food, the clothes, the whatever. And based on the product, the tax rates may be different. The federal government will assign a tax level on specific products. And when those products sell, they'll get their tax, and it'll get collected. And being that we live in a society that is so digital, when those taxes are paid, they just send the validation of what they sold, and then that can have a base audit that validates those sales. And then on a certain basis, government will come in and audit the books and go, oh, it looks like you're doing good. And after so much time, then they'll leave them alone longer. You know, they're honest in their books, then hey, no big deal. For the businesses that are dishonest in their books, well, I'm sorry, but they'll need to pay a fine plus pay the any sales taxes that they didn't, plus a interest fee on top of that. I don't have a problem with that. Absolutely none. If you want to cheat the government as a business, then you're just being stupid. Because in the end, it's not the business who's paying the taxes, it's the consumer. It's just that simple. The end consumer pays all the tax on whatever product is produced. Any sales taxes in the middle, that's just the cost of doing business. It is. We can't just allow people to not pay their taxes. Government needs the taxes in order to function. Then we got Social Security. Trump has decided no taxes on Social Security. We'll see if that passes through, along with the no tax on tips. Again, it's a start, but it definitely benefits our seniors to not be taxed on Social Security. And then when they do get a job and go earn some money, then they're not being harmed for having the Social Security. And let them work as much as they need to. Who cares? Again, if we stop taxing on those things and we start collecting taxes on our spending, it doesn't matter. And seniors, they may forego a lot of things that they might have not foregone in their younger years so that they will have money for their future going forward, but at least they'll have it. We need to revise the Social Security program. Right now, it's so unsustainable. This thing's literally been bankrupt for years, and we just keep throwing more money at it. It doesn't make sense. We need to create a society of savers. How do you do that? You put them in a position where they're forced to save. You say, hey, that money that you've been paying into Social Security every day? Well, you need to open up your own bank account. And you open up your account that Social Security money goes into, and you put it in there. And as you work, that account grows and it grows and it grows. And then you say, hey, you can invest that money any way you want. So if you want to invest in stocks or bonds or whatever, you can do that. So you have an associated brokerage account where you can go buy stocks and bonds, and you do that. You learn how to invest and be a saver and be wiser with money. The wiser you are with money, the more the money will come to you. It's a fact. And in the end, by the time, a 16-year-old starts working to the time they retire at whatever age that they end up deciding to retire, they'll be a multimillionaire because all that money will be in those accounts and will have grown to be worth potentially multi-millions of dollars because they've learned that, they need to manage that money, and they've learned how to manage the money. It's not hard. They also know that there's risk to it. So they have to learn how to manage the risk. Again, it's not rocket science here. We're not putting a man on the moon. We could be. Heck, we could be building colonies on the moon. But right now, with our government nearly $37 trillion in debt, we can't put a mouse on the moon, let alone build a house on the moon. It doesn't make sense. It doesn't. So we need to get government out of our money, those grubby fingers of government. And it's not the elected officials that are the problem, it's the bureaucrats, the people who have the power to stick their fingers in your money and take it. And a lot of them not only have the power to put their fingers in your money, but then they have the power to take your money out of your account and put it in their own. We need to stop that. We need to stop the government being the charity and provider of charity. Churches have done that job for centuries. And now we're here in the 21st century and we think government can do it better. And all I see is whenever government sticks their fingers in things, they figure out how to screw it up. Government decided, we're going to help students by giving them loans so they can go to college and it make their life better. And what did they do? Well, they caused universities and colleges to raise tuition at a 25% annual rate. Who thought that would happen? Oh, anybody with a brain knows that if somebody else is paying the bill and they know they can raise the costs and people pay it because they've been told that they need their product and they can raise their price by 25%. Who's not going to do it? Come on. It's not rocket science here again. So universities were taking advantage of students. The government ultimately was taking advantage of students, but they weren't doing it on purpose. They were doing it secondarily by providing money that they didn't need to provide. And what is the promise that these universities had to these students once they handed them a degree? Anything? As far as I can see, very few of these universities have done much of anything to ensure that their students get an appropriate job, that they are able to pay back the loans. Maybe what should have been happening instead of a loan program is that when a student graduates from school, that for the next 10 years, they have to pay 5% of their income to the school to pay for their education. Really? What would be the negative to that? Well, it means that the universities have to wait for their money. That's a little bit of a drawback. But if the government provides Pell Grants, you know, that would pay a few $1,000 or, $1,000 a year to the university or the college for the student attending. And then any money they're earning, the student pays 5% of that to the university. So, students have to have money to be able to survive. For some that, their parents will help them out and whatnot. But the better they do and the better prepared they are, the more money that the school can make ultimately. That doesn't matter whether you're Harvard or Stanford or, I don't know, Wayne State. There's lots of schools out there who would benefit greatly. It's a process, and these anytime that you as a student you go to work, then you pay the school your tuition after the fact. If you can pay it up front, all the better. But not everybody has those kind of resources. And we don't have any promises from the schools that ensure that we're going to have these programs going on that will ensure success of the student. They sit there and go, well, we're going to provide you a set of tools, and then if you don't know how to use those tools, well, that's on you, and we'll just let the government take the risk. And the government's sitting there saying, we ain't taking no risk. We're going to give you loans, but you can never write them off. The only risk we're taking is if you die. And then if you die, then they go and attack your estate once you're dead. And, the wrecked up motorcycle may be worth $2,500. And they go, well, at least we got $2,500 and we'll have to write off the rest. It's crazy. But our government is not being wise with how they help us. And you have all these bureaucrats who they don't care. They just need more people under them. They need people working for them. So why do they need people working for them? Because they're building fiefdoms. It's like you go into a courtroom and some of these judges are like, when you're here, I'm the king. I'm sorry, but anyway, that's a whole different other discussion. Um, we have a lot of problems in this country that need to be fixed. Taxation being one of those. Our Social Security system is another. We have many, many others. Schools is another issue. We cannot have relying on the federal government. It's not the federal government's responsibility to educate the kids. It's the responsibility of the state. Most of the property taxes that get paid, most of that goes to educating kids. There's no problem with having property taxes and having to collect and utilize those property taxes. But now you've got schools relying on the federal government for billions of dollars collectively. You have unions in government. To this day, I still don't understand why there needs to be a union in government. It's bureaucrats working with private bureaucrats, and they both have opposing goals and yet similar goals. They know that students are a captive audience, especially when you're talking children. The children are the stakeholders of education. Are they getting the best education that they should be? Are they being taught the things that they need to a true impact on life? Are they being taught the things that they need to know to improve the lives of themselves and those around them? Are they being taught the things that they need to know to have a satisfying life? Are they being taught the things that they need to know to be able to create new things, to be entrepreneurial, to be inventive, to have skills to fix things, take care of problems? They're being given some skills, but how good are they when you have so many kids graduating from high school in this country who can barely read? They're functionally illiterate in reading, writing, math. They can do the minimum, but they don't understand. They cannot do all the things that they need to do to reach the people that they need to reach so that society is improved. We've built processes that literally are tearing down our education system, tearing down our government, tearing down the people who are trying to support it. Oh, it's a frustrating thing, but we're getting down to the last 10 minutes here. Again, I'm Doug. I'm running for pres in 2028. How far will it go? I don't know, but it's a fun thing to do, at least for now. In another year, this little battle I'm waging right now will be a lot different. There will be challengers, and at least I can say that I've done my part. Hopefully, I'm making a difference here, and hopefully, people will see this and they'll join on and see that there is value to what I'm saying. And life will improve and we'll have something different, better. Who knows? Anyway, we're in a position here now that we have to make choices, and it impacts the survival of our country. It impacts how we live our lives. It impacts how we see our future. Are you seeing the future I see? I don't know. I hope so. I see a future where we have more control. Is that going to happen overnight? No. Is it something that can be done? Absolutely. Is it something that our founding fathers and had an understanding of? Maybe. But we have an opportunity to push forward and make this grow. Well, I've lived up to my diatribe and I'm running out of words here. So we're going to end this here. Thank you so much for watching. And if you like the channel, like, subscribe, see what's coming down the pipe. We'll be doing and changing some things up here soon. So thanks so much. And you have a wonderful rest of your day.